Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome. My name is Leigh Felton, and this is So You Are Thinking About Being a Chief of Staff, where we're talking about all things that relates to that I consider it a very special role. Um, it's a very interesting role for me because when I started out, I started out almost 20 years ago, and the role was just being defined really in corporate, not just in government and other types of healthcare, but actually in corporate. The role was just being defined. And so I've had a lot of time over these 20 years to really think about and entrench myself in the chief of staff space. So just want to first of all say good morning for anybody joining on Chief. Please make sure to click the link provided, as you have two options. This is being streamed on both LinkedIn Live as well as my YouTube channel. So feel free to go to either one of those. And I always like to start with just saying hello and knowing who's out there, knowing who my audience is. So if you wouldn't mind, who are you? Where are you from? Where are you calling from? Just say hi. You know, I'm one of those people, I can talk. I mean, I can talk, right? I can really, really talk. But I like to be engaged. I like to have conversations. And on this particular platform, as you know, if you've tuned in previously, my only way of engaging you is through the I am channel. So if you want to just say hi to me, tell me where you're calling from. We typically get people from all over the place, but tell me where you're calling from. That would be great. I'm just going to, for people in the Chief login, I'm going to add here the actual LinkedIn login if you want to go there. That way you can also engage and ask questions. And, this is, like I said, this is not just me talking. This is me engaging with you, making sure that I'm here for you and answering your questions and getting you comfortable and familiar with the Chief of Staff role. And I can tell you why this is important. Hi from New Orleans. I love New Orleans. And Muriel, nice to see you again. California and New York. Nice to see everybody. Nice to see you here. I have been looking, so people send me links to different chiefs of staff roles and different things all the time, and I am shocked, truly shocked, at the number of chief of staff slash executive assistant positions that I'm starting to see pop up. Just amazed, because I've been doing this podcast for, gosh, has it been a year, people? Okay, maybe about 9 months or 10 months, but it's close. I've been doing this podcast for so long. I launched the book. There's other books out there that specifically talk about the chief of staff role. And for people to still get the position confused makes me just want to hold up my microphone and go louder and stronger about, let's talk about what an actual executive level chief of staff is. And that's what we're going to do here today. So who else do we have? We have Kim from California, and we have Patrice calling in from UK. I love all my UK and London audiences. Still have a couple of people on Chief, but if you're comfortable listening in that way, I'm not going to be able to monitor the IM window, but if you're comfortable listening in that way, then go right ahead. Okay, so any other good mornings? Come on, people. Are you out there? Now, I know, even though a lot of times it says, oh, you, like right now, my little eye says I have 0 people watching. And we know that that's not true, right? So I don't ever trust the little eye that tells me how many people are watching. Just want to make sure that I am engaging with you. So as we always do, we have a question. Hello, Boston, and Boston, and Boston, and Boston is in the house. Hello, Boston. Hello to you. Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody here on the East Coast. I just came back from Mississippi, and as anybody that knows me knows, Mississippi actually is one of my absolute favorite places on earth. And a lot of people are very curious, especially since I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. So I was born in Mississippi, but grew up in the Seattle area. And people just look confused all the time to say, how on earth are you going to Mississippi? And what do you like about Mississippi? And I actually can, I mean, I can literally relate anything to the chief of staff role, but I can relate that dynamic experience between being in the Seattle area and being in Meridian, Mississippi, the different dynamics of engagement in both of those areas is so vastly different. That is actually how I relate the chief of staff role. You put on this hat one day. One day you are the CEO for the day. You got to make sure things are in place. You got to make sure things are running. You got to make sure that the business is on point to deliver wherever it is you're trajecting to go, right? The next day, who knows what you're dealing with? You have an event that's going awry. You have team members that are going awry. You have to be HR for the day. You have to be finance for the day. There's so many different hats that you have to wear in that chief of staff persona that it's important. And I have fortunes of have been around a lot of places, but it's important that you can adapt, that you can adjust, that you can realize whoever you are, you take that personality with you. You take that skill and your capabilities, you take that with you, but you have to be able to adapt and adjust to what the business, what your employees, what your customers, what your executive, you have to adjust to what they need, what's your board. And so it's very important as you are looking at or interested in a chief of staff role that you understand the complexity of being able to adapt. You understand the importance of being able to deal with ambiguity and being able to shift and move and really be in that position where you're not just focused on being one thing. Okay, so my question, hello from New York, hello from New York, hello from New York, and hello, Heather from Seattle. Nice to see my Seattle folks in the house. I'm in Woodinville, Washington. We always say Seattle, just so people don't get us confused when we say Washington, just so people don't get us confused with DC. But I'm actually on the east side in Woodinville area. So hello to everybody. So our question for today, how we're going to kick this off. I am going, this particular session will be about answering the most asked questions over the last 10 months that I have been doing this podcast. It's about answering the questions that you have all brought. And I just want to repeat and, answer some of those questions for especially people who are just now joining for the first or second time. You may not have gotten some of that depth of things we talk about, because sometimes we bring on guests and we allow those guests the space in this podcast to, just help us learn and grow. So there's a lot of times I don't get to all of your questions, but this particular show is about your questions. So the very first thing that I want to ask everybody is, why are you here? Why did you take just a few minutes of your day, of your time, to sit here and be with me and listen to me talk with you? Why are you here? Are you currently a chief of staff? Do I have chiefs of staff in the house? Are you interested in becoming a chief of staff? That is something that maybe you are performing the functions, you're performing the duties, you don't have the title. You think it sounds like a pretty cool title. And it's definitely one that's getting a lot of attention and a lot of press. And so you're thinking about actually trying to get that title if you're doing, those types of responsibilities, or you're not quite there. This is a career aspiration and ambition for you. And so you're looking to learn what it is that you have to do to fill all of those gaps in order to take on that chief of staff responsibility. Or are you hiring? I love it when I get my hiring CEOs, my hiring executives, my hiring recruiters to join me because they bring a lot of knowledge in terms of what it is they, I always have this dynamic of what is that you think you're looking for, and then trying to figure out what is it that you actually need. And so where are you on that? Or is it just an interesting role and you're just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's something that I want to do. I don't know. I don't know the role. And I'm joining in just because I'm curious about the role, or somebody said, hey, listen to Leigh. She might have something that is helpful for you. So tell me, why are you here? Why did you join in for this quick 30-minute session today? So let's see what we have. So Demuriel is interested in becoming a chief of staff. We have Karen. And Karen, okay, hiring executive, wondering if you need a chief of staff. Let me tell you this, Karen, if you want that right arm where you can focus on all of your strategy, where you can focus on your teams, where you can focus on your business and the future, and in terms of having somebody there running the business, dealing with all of the operational aspects, dealing with your leadership team and helping and supporting that business move where you don't have to, somebody is thinking ahead for you in terms of what's coming next. How are we making sure everybody's aligned? I would recommend a very capable chief of staff to any executive who wants to be high functioning. So that is without a shadow of a doubt. And people do ask me, they say, well, Leigh, you say a chief of staff is not an executive assistant. No, it is not an executive assistant. If you want someone to do your travel, you want someone to do your calendar, you want someone just to take care of you, that is an executive assistant. And everybody knows I have the utmost respect for executive assistants. They are leaders and executives in their own right. The market just dictates, unfortunately, what salary, pay, or compensation is. But we all need to look at our executive assistants as just rock stars. And so if you are looking down on an executive assistant, or if you think an executive assistant is a junior person or a junior chief of staff or a junior business manager, you're truly, truly thinking about it wrong. They are two separate roles. And I always say, if you don't have an executive assistant, the very first place I would start is getting that high achieving, high functioning executive assistant. Nothing will replace having someone to take care of you as you are really, frantic, running around doing everything. But second, without a shadow of a doubt, a chief of staff, an executive level chief of staff, you will wonder how you got to where you did without having one. Okay, so let's see why other people are here. So I have many screens, and so you'll see me looking all over the place. I have my chief screen over here. I have my questions that you've asked over here. I have, my camera here, and then I have the IM window over here. So Karen's wondering about hiring. Hi, Adrienne from Ohio. Lori's interested in the chief of staff position. Yes, I do know Corey. Okay, we could talk about that forever. There's, and it's interesting, over the last 2 weeks, I've had 5 of people from my network, senior people who have moved on in many organizations across Salesforce, in Google. I've had them at Microsoft, and I've had some at Smartsheet. They've reached out to me because they have individuals in their organizations who are interested in becoming a chief of staff. And so I don't do a lot of one-on-one time, only because, as you can imagine, I'm also doing my consulting world. And so I do try to do as much coaching as I can in this bi-weekly podcast so I can reach everybody. So I would highly suggest, if people are interested in learning about the chief of staff role, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I will always respond to you, right? But definitely also go back and listen to the podcast, because I think there's a lot of great information that we've shared over the last year. And if you haven't already done so, and people laugh about, I don't have a copy of the book here with me. Oh, yes, I do. And if you haven't already done so, make sure to get a copy of Unlocking Your Inner Chief of Staff. It's an easy read. It's big letters. It's fun. And for once, I'm such a serious person a lot of the times. For once, I got to do something that is just fun, but it does break down the chief of staff role, what it is, what it's not. How do you do some trade-offs, just looking at non-negotiables and how to think about yourself in that position. So I sincerely appreciate everybody's who's joining from recommendations for other people. We have a LinkedIn user, and unfortunately, a lot of times LinkedIn, the names show up as LinkedIn user, and it won't show up for your actual name until after the fact. But we have LinkedIn user who's interested in becoming a chief of staff. And it's imperative to understand experience of someone with similar identities, such as myself. Identities mean many different things. I identify as Black, female, neurodiverse, non-visible disability, queer woman. So I identify as a lot of things. And primarily, I identify as a person who has spent my my life really trying to drive and achieve. You know, I had this keychain that said "Great, destined for greatness," and I didn't know what it mean. You know, I didn't know what it meant, and I held onto that keychain. I was like 10 years old when I got it, and I held onto that keychain forever because I was like, I'm destined for greatness. I'm destined for greatness, but I didn't really know what that meant, and I kept trying to push and push and push and say, I need to be great. I need to do better. I need to do better. I need to be great. Until I finally realized one day, I am great. I am great. So if anybody wants to identify with me, I hope that identification comes with embracing yourself and realizing all of the things that you've already done to get to where you are right now are amazing. And that just being you and feeling comfortable being you is what makes you great. So anyway, side tangent. What else do we have? Interested in the chief of staff position from Mexico. Hi, Gisela. Please, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Gisela. If thinking of moving into a chief of staff role, first time tech chief of staff, and that is what I think consider so freaking cool. There are lots and lots and lots of new startup tech organizations or new nonprofit organizations who are bringing in the chief of staff role. And it's imperative that as the chief of staff, the first time chief of staff, it's imperative that you take the time to help the organization understand what this chief of staff role can do. It's not about them telling you, go do this, go do that, go make this happen, or go make that happen. As a first time chief of staff, you have to take the reins and you have to say, where are we? Okay, so this is what the job description said. This is how the job description laid out the position. Do you know how most people get their chief of staff job descriptions? They look at other chief of staff job descriptions and they say, oh yeah, that sounds good. Let me pull that in there. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Let me pull that in there. Yeah, we think we need this too. You know, I've heard other chiefs of staff, people that have chief of staffs, they do this, so they'll pull that in there. Not truly understanding the depth of what's behind each one of those lines in that job description. So I always tell first time chiefs of staff, don't go off of the job description or what the organization just says you're supposed to do. Take all of that as data points, as information, assess it, and tell the organization what you need to do. There's a true difference in that. You don't want to be a catcher, and I talk about that. You don't want to be a catcher. A chief of staff is not a person that catches activities, responsibilities, projects, and then go make them happen and blow them up, make them successful, right? That's not a chief of staff. A chief of staff is a director, a leader that says, this is where we need to go. This is what we need to do. And this is how we're going to make it happen and get it achieved. This is the gaps. Yes, there's some things that you catch that you need to get done, but there's more things that you direct and you say, this is how we're going to do it. And this is what we're going to do. So I love it seeing so many first-time chiefs of staff after being a PM, startup, small consulting firms. I'm curious if the chief of staff role would be a good fit. If you're used to juggling and throwing around and, every day looks different, then I would say, look into it. But it's not for the faint of heart. The chief of staff role, someone, and we're talking. So as we're going through all of this, we're actually talking about the exact thing that I want to talk about today, which is all your questions answered. Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, gosh, I'm later stage in career and I've done all of these things and I'm interested in the chief of staff role, but is the chief of staff role a 24/7, 365? And my answer to that is it can be. It depends on who you are. It depends on your organization, it depends on your executive, but primarily, it depends on how you structure and how you function. And so for me, yes, there are times where I'm going, I'm in that zone and I'm going hard and I'm just going strong. And it's like there's no stop. And then I know I have to take care of me. So it's a complete stop. It's a complete break. There are times where I have taken no meet. I either do no meeting Fridays or half day Fridays, or once a month a total just decompression day. And so it's okay for you to figure out what your balance is and determine what that needs to be. But sometimes, yes, as a chief of staff, as the person who is holding many pieces of the puzzle together, sometimes you have to be going very strong and be there at all times of the day and night. And that can't be that can't be something that you're afraid of. If you're ready to sit back and kind of relax for your last few years in the arena, then maybe the chief of staff role isn't quite the right fit for you. Okay, I've been a business administrator for 10 years, serving as right hand to executives, wearing many hats, now looking to transition to the chief of staff role. And I do get that. I get lots of business administrators, admins, executive assistants asking me about the transition from EA to the chief of staff role. We'll talk about that in a minute, because that is one of the questions. I think it's like, if not the most asked question, it is definitely one of the top 5 top asked questions. How do you transition from an EA to a chief of staff? And then Patrice is interested in becoming a chief of staff. Exactly. 8 years experience as an executive assistant, and chief of staff is her ambition for a next step. Okay. So anybody else, if you have any other thoughts or questions, go ahead and pour them into the I am window. Anybody else that wants to say hello, feel free to do that as well. But let's go ahead and kick it off and start with your top questions. So we've had a couple of people in the I am window ask about the transition from an executive assistant to a chief of staff. And this is what I always say. They are 2 different roles. So it's not like you have an executive assistant and it's like, what's that journey? What's that next step? And then that next step, because, the executive path and trajectory is in the chief of staff function. They're 2 totally different functions. So for instance, I've never been an executive assistant, and I would never have somebody hire me as an executive assistant. I don't have the skill set. So there is a separate skill set as well. But just like any chief of staff, it can come from such diverse backgrounds. So I've had finance people become chiefs of staff, HR people become chiefs of staff, project managers and EAs become chiefs of staff, because it definitely takes a very wide perspective and range in order to step into that role. And so my first feedback is, don't ever let somebody tell you that is the path, that is the career path, as though being an EA is not enough. Let's put that out there and just sit with that for a second. Second, if just like any other function, it is your aspiration. It's like, you're not assessing the chief of staff role to being an EA, but you're saying, as my journey, I've worked in executive offices and I see the strength and the power. I know how to run businesses. I want to step away from specifically taking care of the executive to actually taking care of the business. And so that is one way that I distinguish very clearly between the 2 roles. As the EA focuses on the executive and the executive success, the chief of staff, really, even though it's through the executive, right? It's through the success of that executive, but the focus is on that business. And for anyone, whether you're an EA, whether you're in HR, whether you're in ops, whether you're PM, whether you're tech, whatever your current function or background is, the steps to becoming a chief of staff, there are about 10 critical skills that you need to have before you even try to cross that bridge. And then there are so many other skills. beyond that, but it is that analytical thinking that you can see the pieces of the puzzle even before they start to shape, because you're going to help shape them, you're going to help sketch them, and then you're going to help put them together. That, some people talk about my personality and, oh, Leigh, you have this personality where you can get along with everybody. There are people who actually believe that I don't get along with anybody. I have had to, they say, oh, good cop, bad cop. I don't play that. I'm a chief of staff. I do what I need to get done for the business. And so sometimes I am very serious. And I have my business hat on, and it is, I have leaders coming to me. The CXO comes to me. I need this, I need that. And the answer is no. No, it's not aligned to the business. It's not aligned to the priorities. They want to go to the executive. If I say no, they want to go around me and say, okay, well, let me get to the executive. If you have that right relationship with your executive, then when you said no, that executive backs you up and that you're doing the right thing for the business. And so those steps in terms of getting from any function to an actual chief of staff position has to be both in project. So understanding the business, understanding how to think about the actual, where are we going towards the end of the year? What are the steps that we need to get there? If you haven't already done a work back plan, a work back schedule, if anybody knows what that is, if you haven't already done a work back schedule, that is a brilliant place to start. So a work back schedule is you have something that's happening in the future. And it's different from a project plan because a project plan has all of the various aspects of things that you're doing. But this is that you have a milestone that is in the future. And what are the things that you need to do? So you work backwards. What are the things that you need to do in order to make sure when you get to that day that it's a success? And I try to keep my work back schedules very light. Unlike project plans that can be so in depth and have all of this content, I try to keep it very light so people know this is when we're launching. This is when you have to have your final draft. This is when you have to, this is when we're putting the, say a board meeting. For every board meeting, for instance, I always have a work back schedule. And those work back schedules align to another question that I get asked a lot, which is about the rhythm of the business. Or the rhythm of operations. And so, yes, having a very, very clear program of how you run your business is going to be essential. So those are the things that I would practice as very low-hanging fruit in terms of the chief of staff role. And one of the other questions that we've gotten asked, now I'll go to the questions that we've been asked previously. So I'm interested in the impact of the chief of staff position. And I'm curious, does a chief of staff typically manage a team or people, or are they ICs, individual contributors? For the most part, depending on this, you're gonna hear me say this and probably get tired of me saying this so often. Size of the organization, size of the team, the industry, all of those things are going to heavily come into play in terms of whether you're a chief of staff or just about any other role that gets headcount. But for me specifically, I do at this stage in my career, I consider myself on par with the other SLT members. So with all of the senior leadership team members, with the CXOs, I consider as an executive level chief of staff with 20 years experience, I do consider myself on par with the CXO team. And so yes, I do. There's lots of things that I will strategize that I'll put together, but there are some things that are very more tactical that I personally will always have two positions. I will have an EA, just because as an executive level chief of staff, your calendar should be buffering your executive's calendar. So instead of having your executive calendar full of all the things and these inquiry things, you should be taking on all of those. And so your calendar, as my previous EAs can attest to, can be very hectic. But I also will have a business manager that knows finance, a business manager that knows events, a business manager that can handle and look at the details of the rhythm of the business. And so there's lots of things like that when it comes to having a team and being a people manager. If you don't have people management experience, that is another place that I would start in your chief of staff. Before you become a chief of staff, you do need to be able to manage teams, whether you have headcount or not. Did the time go by so fast? Are we already done and I didn't get to everybody? This is why I have so many backed up questions. We have these great conversations, and then we end up having more conversation than actually answering specific questions. But this is what I will do. I have your questions in the IM window, and I also have a few other questions. So what we will do is have another session, and so this will be a continuation, right? Because I do want to make sure that you have a foundation for the chief of staff role, and understanding all of the aspects. So get your questions ready. Go ahead and keep asking them in the IM window. We'll meet in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, I promise I'm going to be on spot for answering every individual question that I can possibly get to. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Leigh Felton. So you're thinking about being a chief of staff, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye.